Hi, and welcome to my second part in my live series on AI use cases. In this part 2, we're going to go and reverse AI in C# to C# in AI, because in the first part we looked at how we put AI inside our C# code. Now we're going to see how we use coding agents to write C# to help, so we don't need to write it ourselves, all of it. And for that, I have a mini review of the best coding agents out there on the market. I have not included things like Lovable, Replit, Bolt, and all these online tools because they can't do C# and they're simply not tools for me. So I've listed Codex, Claude Code, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, and Antigravity from Google. I am currently also testing OpenCode, which is an open source thing, but I have not gotten far enough. It doesn't seem like it will make the cut, but I don't have enough meaningful to rate it here. All of these I've tested at various points in time. The longer back, of course, the more out of date the ratings will be. But I test Codex every day. Claude Code I'm just testing right now, but have my first impressions in order to do this rating. Cursor is way back August. That's a lifetime in AI. So the rating might not be fair. It might get a few more stars here and there, but by far they don't own their own model. They have a model, but they don't have a frontier model. And when you have a frontier model together with making the coding agent by itself, something magic happens. So that's the reason why Codex, Claude Code, and Antigravity always will score high in my book. It seems like there's just something happening. While Cursor, that needs to link on to other models, and the same for GitHub Copilot, will never be as good. When it comes to raw intelligence, I'm giving Codex the highest value of 5 out of 5 here, while Antigravity and Claude Code comes close to it as well. Again, when you own the LLM, when you make the coding agent, magic happens. So they're very close. But Codex still feels more intelligence. They are very close in this category, but are just giving it an edge in that it better understands what we're doing, writing code, and what we need to do. Second, I looked at the experience. How does it feel to use this tool? And for that, Claude Code will win by default. There's a reason why a lot of people have it as their favorite coding agent, but I think it's for the wrong reason. They feel like it's a nice tool to work in. But to me, that would be a nice to have, but it's not a need to have. To me, it's put in the prompt, get the output. Put in the prompt, get the output. It doesn't really matter that it has funny mode, status indicators, and talks in a nice voice. I don't read what they ask me at all, or what they report back to me. I just go to the code. The code speaks for what it did to me. So you could argue that the experience should be even lower on Codex, like a 3 instead of a 4. But for me, it's the matter of just being able to go in and go out and don't need to read and be prompted with all kinds of things. GitHub Copilot also get a high score, but that's mostly because it can be inside Visual Studio Code. The others need to be guided from a terminal or a IDE like Visual Studio Code. But GitHub Copilot can be in Visual Studio. In the perfect world, I would have everything in there. But right now, I'm just prompting in another tool and looking at everything in Visual Studio. The most important one in all this is the ability to follow rules. And there, nobody gets a 5-star, but the Codex is the one that by far gets the best traction on this. It really is incredible at following what I tell it in my rules folders. We will see those in 1 second. And Claude Code is getting better at it. Had I taken my rating from last time, which was back in August, I would say it have gotten 2 stars out of 5. Now it gets 3 stars out of 5, but it's still not up to par with Codex. Claude Code needs to be nursed more and be told, hey, have you forgotten something all the time? And that's annoying. Cursor, middle of the road. And then there's GitHub Copilot and Anti-Gravity, and the reason why so many people fail with AI, and that is that they get GitHub Copilot and it sucks at following rules. It can be told, don't make this, and then it says, great, I will not make this, and then we'll do it. Or do this, and then we'll do something else. It just sucks. And one of the main reasons I don't ever want to touch it at the moment. And the same for anti-gravity. I'm surprised on this. It might be because it's so new, and it might be fixed at some point because the intelligence really feels there. But something is off at the moment, at least, so I need to test again. So with a total score of 13 out of 15, Codex is my primary use case. And for the use case part, I need to give it some rules. If we just use them raw and without anything, they're intelligent, but they will never ever do exactly what you want. So for all of them, you can make rules files. For Codex, it's an agents MD. The same for GitHub or GitHub instructions. For Claude, it's a Claude MD. For Anti-Gravity, it's a Gemini MD. And Cursor have various ones. They can also follow agents MD files, which is slowly becoming the new standard, which is nice. But I will now show you my primary project that I use AI for and the entire agents MD file. The most important thing you can do is, if you haven't done it already, make an agents MD file in the root of your repository. And I don't care if it's empty, just have it so you, when you work with AI, have a place to quickly go and write in things. So what you're about to see has been taking 3, 4, 5 months to tweak, add more, remove stuff on the fly. And I'll go through every single line of it so you understand why I put in what I put in. So my agents MD file just lives in the root, and you can see there's copies of it for Claude, Gemini, and so on, the 3 I'm testing at the moment. And this is my rules. It's a markdown file, but we're just seeing in a rendered version of the markdown. There's no specific structure to an agentsMD file, so you can make it in a different manner than I have, but this is just what seems to work for me. So I tell it it's AI instructions, and I'm telling high level that this is how you code. I do this, I don't mention Codex or Claude Code or anything, so I can copy paste them between without any problems. I tell it there's a README MD file with some additional details if it wants to. Then I tell it how to do building, running, package management, so it knows that after the fact it's built, it can run the code, build the code, and check for error messages. Then you have some available tools. I use something called Context 7 that can help with, I'm using something called ModBlazer. We will see in the next slide what the actual tools are. But this is a way to get open source NuGet packages information. I have a Playwright tool which can run the website if need be. Rare I use it, but still it can be done. I have access to Microsoft Learn, the MCP server, that can check details on how Blazor works and how Microsoft Agent Framework works. And then finally, I have my own MCP server that I've made for my Trello.net NuGet package. So this website that this AgentsMD file is for is using Trello's API, and for that reason, I tell it how to do that easily. It is rare that Codex actually calls any of these. It just looks at the code and figures it out, but it can do it if it needs to. But it tries to not do it too much unless you specify it in your prompts. Then I tell it I'm running on Microsoft Windows and I have .NET, Git, and PowerShell available, and it shouldn't use any other languages. That's because sometimes AIs begin to say, oh, I can find this out using Python, or I can find it out using some kind of Linux-based command line tool. And by telling it this, it stops trying to do that and wasting its time and my time and our tokens. Then I have the project details. It's a .NET 10 project running C# 14, and it should never downgrade, and it should always use the latest features. Because AI sometimes, when given a problem, says, oh, I can fix this by downgrading you to a lower version of .NET, because they don't know the new versions. So it's been told that's not allowed. It's told the project type, it's a Microsoft ASP.NET Core server, Blazor server, and Minible API. It's using a database behind the scenes, Microsoft SQL Server 2025. It's using ModBlazor and Ratson, which are component libraries for Blazor. It's using Microsoft Agent Framework, of course, for the AI, and it works against OpenAI API and Azure OpenAI. Some of them we use OpenAI for because we can get more rate limits, and the rest we use Azure OpenAI. The testing is done using XUnit v3, and the code style is warning treated arrow, so it knows that it needs to have the code not even have warnings, and that editor configs are enforced. So these editor configs that can make certain things be errors and warnings instead of not showing up. It is told that logging is serial log, and it gets some design patterns that are heavy user of extension methods. That's the way I like it. It has Minible APIs for jobs and service endpoints. It has a repository pattern, so we use queries and commands, and it's using EF Core to do that. It has various background jobs for internal scheduling, and it's heavily event-driven with a lot of webhooks. So by telling it all this, it knows, oh, this is my coding environment, and this is what we can work with. Then I give it a solution structure. This is just a kind of shortcut, like an index in a book, so it doesn't need to go out and find everything itself. So if it reads this, and the way it works is AgentsMD is always read whenever you start a prompt. It knows, oh, if he talks about some Blazor pages, then we should be in this. We should probably look in this folder first, or oh, they're talking about some webhooks, then it should be down here, and so on and so forth. So that's just again a shortcut, an index for it to know where different things are in the system. Then I tell it how to generate code, and here, these lines here are probably the most important of the entire AgentsMD. When we read it here, we say, whenever a new conversation begins, do never just start to code. Instead, do the following steps. Investigate the code base. think about the question and what might be unclear. Finally, ask the user 3 to 10 clarifying questions in a numbered list, and I tell it specifically it should be numbers, not bullets. I will get into why in some of the samples. And then once these questions are answered, you can begin coding. So this is a two-step process for me when I'm prompting it. I'm telling it what to do, then it goes investigates, and it comes back with 3 to 10 clarifying questions. Some people go even deeper in this and says whenever they talk, they go into something called plan mode, and they make a project requirements documents, a PRD. So often people say, this is a much better way. Go in and make a requirement document in a markdown file, go to that file and sit and change it on the fly, and then say, please implement this PRD. I found that to be too cumbersome, and it's not needed when you have something as intelligent as Codex. So what I've done is this middle step. It's a direct steal from how OpenAI's deep research work, where it also comes with these follow-up questions. And this can sometimes take like 5 minutes for it to figure out how it will do, and then we'll come up with these questions. And they are quite intelligent questions that when I see them often say, oh yeah, we need to have something there. And if I didn't have this part, I would have instructed it to just do some work. There's some clarifying questions, but they're not really intelligent enough without instructions like this to actually ask. And for that reason, they will just pick one of the two options, and it could be a 50-50 chance of doing it like this or doing it like that. Could be if a to-do list should be personal or team specific. And if you haven't specified, it will just pick one of them, and then you waste a lot of time. So if nothing else, put something like this in. This is the gold in my agent's MD file. The rest is good. This is the important part. We go on to some general coding rules. That's how what I'm allowed it to do. I try to tell it that it needs to do carriage return line feed instead of line feed only. This it can't really follow, but it's not really its fault. It's because the tool that patches the files always do it with line feed. It's a mistake, bug, whatever you call it in Codex at the moment. That so it's a little annoying that these characters in line feed. And the reason why I care is that Visual Studio pops up with a message about, oh, it's wrong. Do I want you to fix it? And they come up all the time. They fixed it, and then that error, that bug came back. So it's a bit annoying. Then I'll tell it to always follow my editor config files. If you haven't checked out what editor configs in general are, do so. It's not like it can try to enforce them, but it can at least read them and check what it is. And I have a style guide later on telling it how I want it. But these actually turns a lot of things into warnings as errors. If the code or if it begins to use var, the var keyword, it actually turns into a build error in my code base. I have banned var, and that's primarily because of AI, because if it just read text that says the word var, it needs to spend more time thinking about what that return type is. So var is banned from my code bases. That might be too restrictive for you, or you like the keyword var, but I'm just already thinking ahead and saying when AI writes even more of my code, it should have the best chance of doing so. there's other rules in there, like all async methods should have the suffix .nsync and async, and that would also be a compiler error if you don't do that, and so on. But so they're there, and to highlight to it how I like the code, and also when it builds the code that it actually gets build errors if it doesn't follow those rules. Then I tell it it's allowed to use new NuGet packages, but only if they're MIT or Apache 2, unless I specify, of course. Also, if the new code is big and relevant for the README file, I'm telling it to include those changes in the README files, but it shouldn't include minor tweaks and changes, so it would load the README file. But if there's an entire new kind of structure or setup or something, it will add it to the README file. Then I'll tell it that if there's anything after the fact for me to do in the code, it should mark it as to do. So I get use my ReSharper To Do Explorer to find the to dos. I also tell it that unless specified, it should not expose functionality as via endpoints because it's directly used in the Blazor pages and the jobs. This is an internal website, so the API should not be public in any way. Then I tell it to not add tests unless specified. This is mostly because a lot of this is UI based, and I want to have dedicated prompts to making tests, so it shouldn't spend its time making tests on code I might want to change anyway later on. Then it should try to remove any unused usings from the new files it creates. Sort of bad at following this. I really hope at some point Codex will get the same feature as Claude Code got recently, which is an LSP server, so it can actually go in and check all the code and navigate it and so on. But for now, I just use ReSharper after the fact to fix things like that. Then I try, which it can't follow too much either, it shouldn't print out any thinking thoughts to me while it's working. Just focus on that instead of spending tokens and time tell me what to do. It doesn't really follow it. I think it's because the thinking process is what makes it intelligent. So you could argue that I should take this away. If it deletes, moves, or adds files, I needed to tell it to put it into the target folder's agentsmd file. I haven't talked about these yet. Once we are done with the agentsmd, I will talk a little about the other agentsmd files I have in this project as well. Then I tell it to always end with a build, and if there's any errors, it's not done. So it always do a build after it's done. So that takes care of me being told now it's done, and then I just go in and see it can't even compile. So that helps. Then if it makes up any temp files while coding members, it should go on and clean them after the fact. Else it has a tendency to leave some temp files it have worked with along the way, but this will make it clean up. Then I have a bunch of rules on how the Blazor code generation rules are. So I always put pages in a subfolder with the word /page in, and I give it a small example, my new feature, page.razor. Then I tell it that all pages need a menu item, because sometimes if you don't instruct AI to do that, it just makes the new page and don't have a way to navigate to it other than the URL. Then I tell it all GUI should be implemented by ModBlazor, except charts that should be implemented by Rats and Blazor, because they're better at it. then I tell it to always prefer components in a component folder over the raw components. So for example, I have, we can't see it here because it's rendered with greater signs, greater than, less than signs, but behind the scenes it talks about some specific components that's being used, and it doesn't really matter for an AI because it reads this file raw anyway and not rendered. Then it talks about placing dialogues in a specific folder. It needs to use the mud grid instead of the flex grids, and then it needs to prefer raw HTML tags like h1, h2 instead of the mud text. Then I tell Entity Framework that it should work with Entity Framework, but it should never do the Entity Framework migrations. That's just a personal preference I have, that I want to be in total control when we make a migration file and not end up with a lot of extra migration files. This is a good example of something that things like GitHub Copilot can follow. When I give it a task that involves Entity Framework, it just makes the migration files no matter what. While Codex can follow this. Then I talk about some lengths in Entity Framework Core. I talk about max length attributes and so on and so forth. I talk about SQL query and SQL commands instead when they make their own queries and commands, and never just injects DB context. Then there's some rules about Trello. We don't need to go into exactly how it works and so on. So it's just some rules that I follow. And then some rules about AI that we use Microsoft Agent Framework against OpenAI and Azure OpenAI. Then we have some code styles, just preferences that I always like braces, that I want to use the initial collection instead of new list and so on. Never use the var keyword, use primary constructors, use simplified new, where I like it to write it like this instead of this, matter of preference. Private fields should have an underscore, do not add XML summaries and trivial comments there, and it's an internal project, so it doesn't need to. Check that it doesn't have any unused usings, private classes, at the bottom of parent classes, never make them sealed, doesn't matter in this project, and all methods should have the async suffix. So just some rules, and all of these rules have actually been enforced by the editor config, but in order to be sure that it actually tries to do it and not just spend its time doing it wrong and then getting the build errors, I tell it still in this in English as well. Then there's some code review rules on how it should do code reviews if I ask it to. We don't need to go into exactly what this is, but it's essentially the same rules that I want to have, that it should use primary constructors and so on and so forth. And finally, there's some UI test generation rules that we use Playwright for that, how it should make a new rule, what we're using, and so on. And it's allowed to put in test IDs on the components if it needs to. So that's everything that are in the Agents MD. You can see it's quite long, but every single part in here has a purpose. And yes, you don't need to sit and write all this in one go. My started out with a few simple rules. It was mostly these rules that started going in first and slowly added more and more. And you can also get Codex or ChatGPT to help you write these rules. Just say, create me a AgentsMD file on what this project is about, and then edit from there. They even have a /init that does that work. But go in and actually make this file your own. Don't just take what the AI put in. Beyond that, I also have a lot of extra AgentsMD files. This is a kind of experiment I'm running right now, in that if this gives more value or not. It seems to not change too much to have these. All of these are generated by AI. By the way, I just told it for each top level folder I have in the website, make a folder that says what is the purpose of this folder, what is the structure of it, how do you use it, where it is used, and how do you create, maintain, or add new content to this folder. So, for example, in the pages folder, it highlights a bit more in details on how to create pages. In a AI folder, it will tell a little more how to use AI and so on. And then it has each page in there on the fly being told how to, what that is about. Again, a small index. And the way multiple agent files works is that if an AI has been told to do something in pages, it also read this AgentsMD file on the fly. While if it's working up in the API, then it's only reading that file and so on, plus the root folder, of course. So it hasn't hurt to put these in, at least, but I don't know. I can't say for sure that it made it infinitely more intelligent. But I don't really need to do anything in these. They are self-maintaining by the rules in the root folder, that if it adds something, it needs to also add it here. The MCP servers I use, we already saw them, but Context7, MSLearn, Trello.net, and Playwright. I don't want it to ever do something with GitHub for me on the fly, so I haven't put that in, which is one of the common ones as well. But I tend to try to keep it as light as possible. Many of these have only a few tools in order to also keep the context for actual coding and not just MCP servers. Last part of this very long video so far is a few sample prompts that are real life prompts that I have made to my system. Because I've talked with others and they say, oh, when I make a prompt, I sit in Word or Notepad or something and write a full page of what it should do. I never do that. I have my agents MD files that help me give all the information, and then I give it simple prompts. This is a fairly short one that I said on the vacation registration page. Could you turn the team member combo box into a mod grid instead, showing everyone at once, and let the selection of an employee be on row select. So I had a combo box where you could choose a employee, and it was annoying switching employees. So it would be nice. There was room to put in a list of them, and then I just told it that. And this is the 7 questions it came back with. It asked me, should it be single select? Good question. How should the selection happen? Should it be with a row click? Should it be with a checkbox or whatever? Should the grid be sorted by name, or should it be sorted by something else? Again, a good question. If I wanted a search box, or just a full list, it not knowing that the team members is a short list, so it doesn't need it. Then when the user changes state filter, should it keep the current selection, or even if the user have zero match registration that period? Very good question as well. What about the height? How high should it be, and so on? Any extra information showing on the list? Should it, for example, show how many days of vacation in the current period, and so on? And the reason why I put in the numbers, and I was so determined to put that into the agents file, is that then I can say 1, single select, 2, click anywhere. So I can write these. I'm just telling, if it was just a bullet list, I needed to say, for the selection, I need this. For the row click, I need this, and so on. But this way, I can just quickly put my answers back, write them in, and then it let it just work. And 10 minutes later, it's done. It has aced it. It's really, really impressive. I might give some follow-up guidance. In this case, I actually saw the 60 view height and saw it was a little too low, and I asked it to put it up to 80 view high, and I asked it to make the row that was selected a different color. So there was a bit of back and forth after the fact, but 95% of everything was done just by this one little prompt and these follow-up questions. Another one was I got a bug report. There was a little meta. There's a bug feature on the page, and that didn't seem to work. So I needed to report that the report a bug feature didn't work. It just gave an error message back, and like a normal user, I just told it doesn't work. And it's really, really interesting what it came back and said. Yes, it had looked at it now. It want to fix it, but it needed a bit more details, just like a normal developer would. Can we confirm that that it's the feature that is down in the lower right corner? Yes, it is. Does it happen every time, or is it something that only happens? Is it reproducible? Yes, it is. If we are in the field and we go out of the field, does it still happen, or is it only when we are in the field? Still happens. Are there any specific formatting? Do I do anything special, or is it just plain text? It's just plain text. Does the problem happens if you type a single word, just like test? So all these questions that I would also ask if I were not the reporter of this specific bug. In my case, I was the one who had reported this. If I wasn't, I needed to either test in order to be able to answer these, or go back to the user before we could actually fix this. But in this case, I just gave it everything I knew, and again, 5-6 minutes later, it had fixed it. Small little dumb mistake from my side. The fun one I have here, that's done in the terminal instead of the Visual Studio Code extension. So I just said we had made a new knowledge-based system for documentation, and I needed a job that could schedule it with a third-party system. And I just told it for the docs knowledge system, make a new job like the other jobs, can be set up on a schedule and do the cloud sync. So it thought about that for, you can see, 2 minutes, and then it gave me some questions. And I actually gave this exact thing to Claude Code as well. It gave me similar questions, but notice some details. Okay, it asked what should the job be. Claude Code did the same. Should it use the existing feature as is? Claude Code did the same. Should it work in simulation mode? Yes or no? Claude Code asked the same. But then Claude Code stopped there. Codex was intelligent enough to know that there was a job simulation page, and if it should also be included there. It's not even written in any of the pages in the agents or anything, but it noticed that all the other jobs were there. Claude Code missed that. Only when I asked, have you not forgotten something in a follow-up prompt? So, oh yeah, there's a job simulation page. Should I put something there? And then it did. But the last is the real intelligent one. In your schedule metadata, on this job simulation page, it says what the title of the job is, what the description is. Yes, an AI could find that. But how long does this job takes? So Codex was intelligent enough to ask me, I need to know this because I can't just make stuff up. So I told it all the things before that, and then I told it that the estimated time is roughly 30 seconds for this job, and else it should just choose the title and script. And it did in a very good way. Claude Code, first of all, forgot to put something into the job simulation page. And once I told it, hey, you forgot something, it found it and did it, and then it just made up that this job takes 1 to 5 minutes. It never asked, it never did anything, it just put that in. That is not intelligence in my mind. That is where we need to nurse too much. We need to check too much. Because end of day, I don't really need to check this code anymore. I have talked with Codex. I do it anyway, but I have talked with Codex enough to know that this is good code. And it is. It even went into this command and refactored it so the new job page could, in a simulation, get all the numbers back. Claude Code just used it as is and did a very poor job at job simulation. But here it came back after 6 minutes of working, so a total of 8 minutes, and the time it took to get my answers back, and told me what it had done. I don't really read these too much. I just go in and look at the code, and the code just felt right. I haven't changed any single line of code in this. You can see it also used agents MD, again something Claude Code missed when I gave it the exact same prompt. But it is in my agents MD that it needs to do this. It forgot. So this could just be checked in. I didn't need to do anything. And that's why I feel like Codex is the right tool, at least for me. Had I been less knowledgeable about this code, have I felt like being a vibe coder and just let a system do things for me, I would definitely use Claude Code. But for these precision changes to existing code bases, especially existing code bases, Codex is the tool I use. And that's why I use it in real life. So this has already been way longer than I expected, but hopefully it's been beneficial along the way in understanding. The most important thing for you now is to go out there and make an agents MD file, and then go and choose one of the 3 main ones. Don't take Codex just because I say so. Take Claude Code, take Codex, or take Anti-Gravity. I would not recommend Anti-Gravity because of the not following rules, but the 2 others are solid choices. I just feel like Codex is the one that gives me the best value. So that's why I've chosen it, despite all the hype on YouTube and the internet and so on, that Claude Code is so nice. Yes, it's nice, but I'm not going for nice. I'm going for productivity and correctness. And that's what Codex can give me more than Claude Code. So I think that's everything for this video. See you in the next one.